Look, I started selling stuff online in terms of through drop shipping at age of 15. One of the biggest things, you've got to be highly prepared. You can never walk into any sort of VC meeting with a half-baked idea. Whereas in the real world, no one's there to hold your hand. No one's there to support you. No one's there to double check on what you're doing. For anyone to give, a cent to an 18-year-old, they're going to have to believe in that 18-year-old's vision, even if they're 19 or even a 25-year-old.
Welcome to Not the Rob Bell Podcast, where we talk with business owners, marketers, and professionals to extract what makes people and businesses successful.
Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Not the Rob Bell Podcast. Today's guest, I've got Jack Bloomfield. He's 18 years old and he's made millions of dollars with his e-commerce businesses and training programs. We talk all things business, raising venture capital for his new venture, and it's coming up now. Hey everyone. We anticipated this podcast as being a weekly event, but we thought with everything going on right now that twice weekly would be twice as good. So we might not hold this forever and we may go back to weekly, but enjoy the extra episodes right now. So Jack Bloomfield from Disputify and founder of the Bloomfield Group, really nice to chat to you today.
All right, thank you, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
So for those of you, listening who haven't heard of you, you're now an 18-year-old entrepreneur, but you made a bit of a media splash being like a self-made teenage millionaire and driving your BMW to school. That's the flashy side that they talk about, but what was the reality of that?
Well, interesting. I mean, when you're one of the only kids with a European car at school, it's pretty cool. Look, for me, it was kind of a dream come true. Just personally, growing up and always, I went to a great school here in Brisbane. So, you get kids every day whose parents would buy them nice and flashy cars. And for me growing up, mum and dad had always been of the opinion that if you want anything in life, you've got to go and work for it, whether it's a phone or whether it's a car, either one, even a phone plan, you've got to go and work for it yourself. So for me, it was less of a, look what I'm doing or look what I've got. For me, it was just kind of like a checkbox, a win for me personally. And for me, that was pretty cool.
That's cool. That's really cool. And so did you, obviously you started your first business, which I think is Next Gifts when you're about age 12. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, look, the first official one was at 12, but look, I've always been very entrepreneurial minded and just kind of wired that way. Like the earliest video I've got of me doing anything business-like is at 8 years old. If you've seen my Instagram, you've probably seen it. Me in Dad's office chair in a suit and a tie. Literally 5 minutes before that interview, I remember vividly walking in and going, "Dad, can you please interview me about this new business I want to start?" He kind of sat there and went, "Oh, really? Oh, okay, fine." So I went and got my suit and tie and got the banner behind me. Went and charged up the camcorder, one of those flip ones. It's got the screen that comes out the side, if we remember those. And sat down, did the interview. Allegedly, I was going to have 4 employees, 3 trucks, 4 planes. My main competitors for the shipping business was Toll, Infox, T-Mac. Going to make $400 a year in profit. Mate, it was a serious, I took it very, very, very seriously. I still got the website today. I can find it. So nice. It was nuts. Anyone at the time, and for me, even looking back now, I just shake my head and go, "Oh my gosh." But at the time, it just seemed normal, and it didn't seem like anything unusual.
And I mean, I've seen you talk about your parents and their business and how they don't necessarily understand quite what it is that you do now, which does happen through generations. That's pretty standard. But how important was that support and even just seeing them behave as business people when you were really young and just observing?
So probably more importantly, the second thing you said there, which was just being around them and observing. You've probably heard that mum and dad started a business like 18, 19 years ago now. Dad used to be an accountant, mum used to be a flight attendant. Dad was doing really well at his job and so was mum, but they were getting bored, especially dad. And he said, "I want to try something different." And mum was like, "All right, just give it a shot." They sold their house, they sold every single thing they had, and they went and bought a small little tennis center on the outskirts of Brisbane, so at Everton Park. And it just went from there. Look, they started from absolutely nothing, couldn't afford to pay anyone to work in the shop. So dad would be in there for 13, 14, 15 hours a day, especially because you've got a lot of people who will play tennis at night, social tennis, all that sort of stuff. And he'd have to be there for every single time someone checked in. So if we were having dinner and someone was downstairs trying to check in for a court, it means he's got to get up, he's got to leave dinner, and he's got to go down and serve them, come back up and continue eating. So looking back on it now, it was quite intense, the work they put in to get this thing to where it is today. But the attitude that I took of it is, the basic thing is to start anything, whether it's a business or whether it's just any sort of project. It's going to be hard. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take sacrifice. And for me, seeing that at a young age, not specifically being told that's what it took, because no parent tells their child that, but just seeing it. And for me to start anything, it was kind of like, well, yeah, I want to start a business, but the other side that no one talks about in terms of the hard work and the grind and the grunt and being able to do things a lot of people aren't willing to do, that was inbuilt for me from a very young age, just being around that sort of environment.
It's an interesting sort of skill to build and an interesting perception that you've developed there of what your parents are doing, because we do see young entrepreneurial ads and things for, get rich quick and not have to do any work and the money will just print itself. Like, how different has your experience been to that sort of idolized mindset of a young entrepreneur?
For me, I can't honestly say that what I've had to do to get to where I am today has involved me, I think a lot of people, when they think about, starting a business, and it's kind of hard for me to put it into words, they think that there's this level of, this grind and this hustle. And yes, there's all that stuff. And I could not agree more. And that's so important. And guys like Gary Vee are very good at promoting that. You got a lot of other entrepreneurial people who are on YouTube and Instagram promoting the grind and the hustle. And that's fantastic. But for me, the biggest thing that I guess kind of stood me apart from everyone else, or maybe anyone else who started when I did, was probably longevity. I think that it was not doing it and giving up 6 weeks later, or not doing it and thinking that, I can become a success in 6 months. And if I don't become a success in 6 months, then something's not working. For me, there was always this deep love and this deep passion for what I was doing. And the idea of success, was always there. Everyone kind of wants to be successful in what they do, whether they like it or not. But I was there to stick it out for the long run. And things didn't work out for me for a very long time. There were so many nights I was sitting there scratching my head going, what the hell am I doing? This is never going to work. There was a lot of self-doubt, just like everyone. And no one seems to talk about that. So, for me, it was in terms of the rosy picture of entrepreneurship and how things are meant to work instantly, it certainly wasn't that way. But at the same time, too, it wasn't me day in, day out, grinding and hustling and scratching my head and, banging my head against a wall. There was some of that some days, but I think a lot of people, you're either on one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum. And it was kind of in the middle, which I think is the reality for a lot of business owners and young entrepreneurs, to be honest, if they do it the right way.
And so I suppose there's a real balance there to strike between persistence and working smart, I suppose. And, how did you kind of define the difference between those?
It was actually, one of the things was school, for example. I started the first business at 12. So I can't remember exactly what grade that is now. Maybe five or grade 6 or 7. Around, whatever it is. Whatever grade's irrelevant. It's school, for example, kind of put me, I had school from 8:30 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And, for the longest time there, we didn't have computers in school. So unlike for the last couple of years of school, like grade 10, 11 and 12, where I was able to work on this business or businesses during class time, starting out, I didn't really have that. So it was good because I couldn't do anything from 8:30 to 3. So by the time I got home, I got very, very, very good at time managing. So being able to get home, do homework, manage social life with your parents, for example, to be able to talk to them and make sure they still feel that there's a connection there. Yep. And then have dinner as quickly as you can, and then get into work straight after dinner and continue to work until 9, 10 o'clock at night. See, I found that was good because at the same time too, you're not trying to cram it all. You don't have 7 days to just work on one thing, 14, 15 hours a day for 7 days. You can burn out very quickly. So there was almost this natural buffer in between, which at the time seemed like a huge, big downweight on me. But actually in hindsight, it kind of helped. But, when you get to grade 11 and 12 and you've already got a computer there, and a lot of kids in younger grades have got computers, so they can do the business thing at school. There is some sort of still nice natural barrier where you are forced to participate in school sometimes, even if there is a computer there.
Yeah, of course. And so obviously as you got your foundation in business and things progressed, if I'm not mistaken, you became, or where you found your success was around e-commerce and drop shipping. Can you riff on that a little bit, just in terms of, the broad overview of what you achieved there?
Yeah, definitely. So, look, I started selling stuff online, in terms of through drop shipping at age of 15. Had $500 to start. Had run a couple of businesses before, so the one at 12. So selling gift cards online, and one or two in between there. So I had a couple of $100 that I'd saved. The rest of it I'm blowing on stuff that, no one actually needs, but everyone thinks they do. So, whatever you buy on your 14 Nintendo's toys, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so look, apart from that, started at 15, took me 6 months to even make a sale. The reason I started was I saw a guy on YouTube he was in the US. I think he was 21 or 22 at the time. Had no idea who he was, but just stumbled upon this video. He was talking about how much money he was making and how simple it was. And, me being like a lot of other people, saw it and was like, well, if this guy can do it, why can't I? It seems so simple. I mean, how hard could it possibly be? I've built websites before. I've done marketing. How complex could it possibly be? Little did I know that it would take, 6 months to even make a sale. It was me for 6 months scratching my head going, oh my God, how do I do this properly? Trying to put all the bits together and trying to make it all work. At the end of it, finally did 6 months. I was selling carbon fiber money clips, which was my first ever product. Made a sale for $30. It made absolutely none of the money back, especially when I didn't have anything to even invest in education. So I was just learning through YouTube videos and blogs and all that sort of stuff. And then started to piece it together. And I figured, well, if I can make one sale, why not make two? And then scaled on to 3 and 4 and 5 and really started to get my head around, what I was doing. This was 2017, moving into 2018, things started to really accelerate for me, started to really, really, really well with everything I was doing online. And then, that's kind of when, the first inkling of me on the public scene kind of came out in June. I was doing about $3,500 a day, which at the time was like, whoop-de-doo, look at me. But at the same time, so no one knew what I was doing. I was very private with the whole thing. You'd have a couple of really close friends and close family members at the same time too. And I liked it that way because, as soon as you, especially within Australia, as soon as you start telling people how well you're doing and what's been going on, even if you're not trying to directly, spruik how good you are at what you're doing, it does, there's some people will come back and, they won't give the nicest responses. And I didn't really want to open myself up to that. So kept it very low key, got the email from news.com.au, which was through a friend of a friend of a friend. Agreed to do it. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll end up on page 4. Hopefully no one will see it and possibly give a good CV reference in the future if I ever need one. Anyway, so I agreed to do it. And from that, it was really, not only did the business continue to grow, but in terms of me on a public scene, it was essentially where everything started there in terms of media and all that sort of stuff. So no, it's an interesting period. But one that I'm really, really thankful for and a journey that was pretty cool.
And so was there, during that, just before we get to the media side of things, was there that period where it was really humming along? $3,500 a day is no mean feat for e-com by any stretch. And was there anything there that really stood out as the key that, was pivotal there that you didn't have 6 months prior when you were waiting for that second or third sale?
Look, I think it was probably being resilient enough to be able to accept and learn from your own mistakes. When you don't have money to spend on a mentor, you don't have money to spend on any sort of education in anything, not just e-commerce. You've got to really make do with what you've got. And the first thing, and probably the only thing you will do, is make mistakes. And for some people that might be super bad. Making mistakes typically seems like it's a poor thing to do, but actually not. If you are making mistakes, it's called what I was doing is doing templates and spreadsheets, figuring out, well, what mistakes did I make? Why did I make those mistakes? How can I improve on it next time? And what was that next time going to be? And I had it all mapped out. So that was one thing that I really did change. For me, it stopped me stuffing up twice on the same thing. So I just kind of keep improving over and over again, which was very, very, very helpful when I had a very limited budget, had no education behind me, was still trying to manage school, social relationships, all that sort of stuff at the same time. So I really had to make do with what I got and become pretty creative.
So it was really sort of a fine tuning and a retrospective, as opposed to stumbling on a absolute killer product that just ran itself out the door.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was half of that. Obviously, I mean, no matter how good you are at learning from your mistakes or, becoming better at what you do, if you don't have the right product or you don't have the right story, your store looks like it, came out of 1973, you're never going to do that well. So it was a combination of, me learning more, but more importantly to improving what I was selling on, what I was selling, how I was marketing, and all that sort of stuff. So it was all a gradual improvement, and like with anyone, you get better over time.
Of course. And then obviously it's, as you say, it started with news.com.au and then sort of exploded in a media way and sort of took on a bit of a life of its own in terms of you've shared a stage with Tony Robbins, Mark Bouris, had a one-on-one with Gary Vee. You've keynote at a TEDx at Rabina. Like, how much of a whirlwind was that process, and how rapidly did that take hold?
Quite rapidly. Yeah, it was. In terms of being a whirlwind, yeah, definitely. It's not something that I've ever done before. Hadn't known anyone who has done it before, because it means there was no one there for me to go ask or seek mentorship in terms of how do I manage all this. When it first started to come out, I was quite nervous in terms of, what people would think, other people's judgment, all that sort of stuff. I didn't really know, kind of how to go about it all. But I was actually really relatively surprised, just the overwhelming positive response from just the general Australian public in terms of me, my story, and like I'd never been called inspirational before in my life. It wasn't something that, I don't think many people have. And to just have someone call me that, like, it just was unbelievable. And for me, and what I didn't really understand through doing all this was, I started to get messages from kids, and I still was 16 at the time, getting messages from other kids and getting messages from people who were slightly older saying, you've inspired me to start this, you've inspired me to do this. I've always had a fear of going out there and starting my own business, and now seeing you has given me the confidence to do it. Like, that's something I didn't expect, did not even cross my mind would, encourage people to do. So as soon as it started and realized that was the effect it was having for me, and like I felt like I was making a difference. That's what I feel like I do every single day. So in terms of motivation and all that sort of stuff, that's what really keeps me going, knowing that what I'm doing has an impact on a larger scale, and I just think that's pretty cool internally.
And is that what sort of catalyzed the evolution from, say, e-commerce to your like education series and training programs?
Well, yeah. So they were both kind of hand in hand. The biggest reason why I even started doing any education training and all that sort of stuff was, I had no intention to whatsoever. You don't really walk into starting a business and doing all this sort of stuff with the outcome of also running an education program on the side of it. It just doesn't really go hand in hand typically. But through all the messages, the ones that continually come in day out that say, I want to, what you're doing is great, Jack. That's fantastic and well done. It's like, well, okay. They go, well, then is there any way that I can learn what you do? Is there a way that you can teach me somehow? Is there a way that you can mentor me? You get them every single day. And for me, it was hard because I'm the kind of person who would want to sit there and say yes to every single person and go, no, I do want to help you. You get messages of mothers who have lost everything. You get people from, Malaysia who have immigrated to Australia and have nothing there and want to start a business. It's devastating. And you want to help every single one of them. But you can't. So that was kind of the thing. Well, if I can just put something together, some videos online in terms of how I do what I do and just start that, that's kind of where it built from. So then they kind of just got run hand in hand at the same time.
And how do you navigate the waters between, as you say, getting everybody reach out, especially when such sudden media attention takes hold? How do you find that balance and navigate between finding the people that you can help and just having to say no ultimately in some cases?
It's a hard one, and it's not really, it's not something you really learn how to do over time, because to be honest, no one likes to say no. I certainly don't like to say no. You've just got to find the line between, like a lot of people unfortunately will, feel like that's their duty to go back to DMs, let's say, for example, of people reaching out for help, and they go back to every single one of them and they try to help them out as much as possible. You've kind of got to have a level of self-awareness that goes, do you have the time and do you have the capability and do you have the resources to actually help this person? Because I never want to promise some sort of empty promise. And I feel that by promising to do something for someone that I can't really fulfill, it's very difficult. Giving them one small bit of advice probably isn't enough to help an immigrant that's come to Australia to transform their life and start a business. That's a 6-12 month process to teach them individually how to do this thing properly. So for me, it's certainly a balancing act, not something that I've have learned to manage completely, and I don't think anyone really has, and I certainly don't think I will fully learn how to manage it completely anyway. So it's just a balancing act, and just I think trying to manage expectation, because as soon as you get some sort of media and PR and all that sort of stuff for anyone, all eyes kind of start to turn on you and you get offers for different things. You get people reaching out, you get all this sort of stuff. And you've just got to become really good at managing what's good, what's bad, what is a good use of your time, what's not a good use of your time. How do you balance giving back at the same time through, making success in your own business. You've just got to become self-aware. And as I say, I think just anyone gets better at it over time.
And so I've seen that you've met with, various people from big organizations such as LinkedIn and, various politicians, like state politicians and that sort of thing. Was that all catalyzed from that media attention as well and sort of running with those important aspects, or did it come about some other way?
Look, I think they play both together. Look, if it was me just using, most of them certainly don't reach out after seeing, even if they were sitting there in front of the Today Show and see you on the Today Show talking about what you've done and all that sort of stuff. Not many people of that caliber are going to sit there and reach out and, invite you to come do something. Only person who actually has is Robert Irwin, which I thought was the coolest thing ever because, I grew up watching Robert and Bindi. So for me, that was super cool, but that's really the only one that's ever actually.
And you guys are pretty close geographically too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So literally, I think he reached out on the Saturday and I was up, Monday afternoon to go see him at Australia Zoo. So nice. No, it was very cool. But no, so look, it's that, but then it's also to leveraging those the best you possibly can and figuring out, don't just meet with people for the sake of meeting with people. You've got to figure out kind of, what's the strategic reason for me that people just don't want to meet other people for the sake of doing it. They want to meet for a purpose, and just like you should be meeting for a purpose as well. So you've just got to figure out what is that purpose? How can meeting with this person kind of advance you in something you're working on or something you're doing? And then going in with that strategic outlook. But having media behind you certainly helps. Just having a level of credibility so they can kind of distinguish you from most other people, justify in their own head why they're meeting with you, and then you can move forward that relationship. So that's pretty frankly why.
Yeah, that's cool. And obviously I saw that you got on stage in a Success Resources event with Michael Lane and, not with Michael Lane, through Michael Lane from Success Resources. And was that sort of between that and your TEDx appearances and that sort of thing, are you keen to do more keynote sort of stuff? How does that factor into what you're trying to achieve business-wise?
Yeah, so I think once again it comes down to managing, your own personal workload and where do you put your effort and kind of what's going to benefit you in the long run. For me, I really enjoy doing keynotes. I think they're especially ones with Michael and Success Resources. Especially when they involve Tony Robbins. I mean, who couldn't say no? Yep. But they're great. But at the end of the day, you've got to figure out, what are you going to get out of this keynote? Yeah, you might get a couple of $1,000s or some other opportunity off the back of it. Yeah, that's great. But is it strategically going to align with what you want to achieve in 5 years' time? And if the answer is no, then don't do it. And I think that a lot of people will get wound up in the idea of making a bit of money here and there. I can make $4,000 or 10 grand or 5 grand or even $500. Doing this, and this just over here. But I think, what a lot of young entrepreneurs don't do, and I'm certainly guilty of it when I started out, was figuring out how can I make money as soon as possible? Like within 6 months, how can I make as much money in 6 months? Because we have no concept of time. And I think what older entrepreneurs have kind of got over us young guys is whether it's success or whether it's not, they've had time to sit there and figure out what does 20 years actually feel like? What does 30 years actually feel like? And there's that level of concept of time. I just think that a lot of people will get, people same age as me, younger or slightly older, will just get a little bit too wound up in terms of how to make money instantly right now. But when it comes to building something with longevity that might last 5, 10, 15 years time, and really, if they put off making money and they build something really, really, really good, but don't make any money off it for a year or 2 years, figure out how to pay the bills some other way, but this thing could turn into the next Facebook or Uber or Amazon, and they've got that vision there. They've just got to kind of put in perspective the timeline that something like that's going to take, and then realize that the best thing they do have on their side is time. They've got time to figure it out, but what they don't have is perspective in terms of what does that time actually feel like and what is the best way to use a decade, whereas guys a bit older do. So it's kind of like a balancing act, and for me, keynotes is one of the things where I'll do one every now and again, one every couple of months, because I love doing them, but it's just, taking the time out of your week to go do something like that. You just got to figure out, does it align with, the vision you're working towards. If the answer is no, don't do it. But if the answer is yes, then yes, certainly jump in and do as many as you can.
Was that always your perspective, or like obviously you've had personal conversations with Tony Robbins, Mark Burris, Gary Vee, even have a personal testimonial from Tony Robbins, who's like the master of being in this space for a very long time. Was that like, is that wisdom imparted from those experiences, or did you sort of already have that mindset coming into those?
Yeah, look, coming into, because something I learned over time, it's not something I really figured out until probably 6 to 12 months ago that I really figured out I've got to start to play towards a 5 and a 10 year vision, as opposed to kind of a 1 or a 2 or a 3 year vision, just stretching that out. We'll see how that plays out. I certainly think I've positioned myself quite well to do so. But no, it wasn't through conversations with Tony or anything like that. I wouldn't have any of the past experiences any other way. I'm very, very, very lucky to do things like that. But yeah, no, it's just something that I've learned through a couple of mentors of mine, and just heard really smart people like Jeff Bezos and all that sort of stuff talking about it online. I still get a lot of my education free online YouTube videos. For anyone listening, probably the best place to find any sort of online education from high level CEOs is, funnily enough, CEO interviews at conferences. They're all over YouTube. I find that they are the very best place to deep dive into these people's minds. They're under pressure. They feel like they're under pressure. They've got an audience to answer to. They've got someone next to them asking them questions, and you get the very best advice. I think they're better than books. I think they're better than a couple of other things that you can get information from. If you want information from high-level people like a Jeff Bezos or a Bill Gates or even a Tony Robbins, let's say, I think that on stage CEO interviews, funnily enough, are probably the best place.
Definitely makes sense. And obviously this will be on YouTube now too. So
we'll count this as a CEO interview then. There we go.
Absolutely. So obviously shifting gears a little bit, you've recently ventured into a new venture, Disputify. And from obviously you guys are operating in stealth mode. We can't talk too much about what it is you're actually developing, but the short version is reducing chargebacks through e-commerce.
Yeah.
Was that spawned from your experience with e-com and the chargeback problems that exist in that space?
Yeah, and look, for probably the last 12 months, I've kind of been looking at a couple of different ideas and things I could do off the back of e-commerce and stuff I was already doing. So it was kind of a natural fit. This is one of the biggest problems I incur as an online seller is chargebacks and disputes. Worst thing is it's not just people who don't receive a product call up that they can complain about it. That's totally fine and they should do that. But it's individuals who buy products online, get them, have no intention to pay for them whatsoever. So then they get them and they call the bank up and say that it didn't arrive, it was the wrong color, it wasn't as described. But even if it doesn't arrive, we've got tracking on a lot of these packages and we can see they even signed for the delivery and they call around and say it never arrived. It's like, well, how was that physically possible? So as soon as we started to put some tracking in terms of how does this actually happening, we realized very quickly that a lot of these people were fraudulently doing it over and over and over again. So as soon as I figured that out, I started to do some more research and realized the problem pretty much plagues the entire industry. I'm a very small fish in the water in terms of the grand scheme of the online world. And as much as it's a huge problem for me, the problem just gets bigger and bigger the more you move up the food chain. So I set out to change that, essentially provide a solution to it. And that's one of the biggest things we're working on since November. And it's been going really well, with a lot more coming in the next couple of months where we can start to talk a bit more about it.
Yeah, of course. And so this is VC venture backed, and I understand you just just raised a Series A, or was that a seed round?
I see. That would have been a seed round. So yeah, for some reason, someone's put Series A in my link. I wasn't made aware of that yesterday, funnily enough. So no, that does need to be changed of all things. But so a seed round.
That's okay. So obviously you probably can't give us too much detail around that, but how did that come about, and how was the process so different for you as an entrepreneur to say when you're just firing up an e-com store and start selling something?
Yeah. Oh, great question, because it's actually something that and you probably know, I've never actually done before. I've never raised money for a venture. I've done before. All of what I've done has been self-funded, started from $500 and just bootstrapped my way up to what I've done with e-commerce. So It was different. One of the biggest things, you've got to be highly prepared. You can never walk into any sort of VC meeting with a half-baked idea. You've got to have this thing pretty much down to the T. The more developed you make it feel like, as in the more the VC can sit there or the high net worth individual can sit there and go, you look like you know exactly what you're doing, the better. The less of an idea, essentially, the better. So you just got to work along. And if you can have something to show for what you're thinking about, the more, the better. So no, it was certainly interesting. It's something that I'm sure we'll be doing again and again over time in terms of raising money for different things, especially Disputify, and possibly raising more money for that if ever needed. But yeah, look, it's something that it takes guts, certainly. You're going to get a lot of no's. Especially if you don't have any sort of profile behind you, have never run a business before, but you have a really good idea that you want to go ahead and tackle. Biggest piece of advice would be to, I guess, try to find a fine line between, a lot of people talk about, well, I don't want to talk about my idea because then someone might go steal it or rip it off or copy it. That's great, but you've got to kind of go, if you're walking into VC meetings with NDAs, they've got a sign that says you can't talk about this, you can't copy my idea. You're kind of going to get laughed out of the room. Thank God I didn't do it. But the amount of stories I've heard of people who have tried to do that, who don't talk to anyone about their idea because they think that someone else is going to steal it, it's pretty ridiculous. But at the same time too, I get the other side of the argument, which is you do have to be very careful of who you're talking to. Just limit the exposure. Stop, going to family functions and telling every single person the great idea you have. Go to the family function and tell everyone what you've done with the idea, whether you've raised money, whether you've built the product, whether you're scaling it. Come back with more than an idea. And I think that that's just a philosophy that VCs want to hear. Just make it as more developed as humanly possible. Do what you can, but then more importantly too, don't walk in there with some stupid expectation that, they're going to sign an NDA or, something like that. So that's just my couple of observations, but no, it was a very, very interesting experience and quite fun at the same time, as long as you can, hold your own, and for all the tough questions, you've got the answers to them.
Yeah, no, good advice. I think, how was sort of expectation versus reality, like walking into your first pitch meeting to try and secure some investment? I think we all probably picture it a little bit like a Shark Tank episode or something, but what was that reality for you?
Look, mine was a lot better because I had a funds manager there to help me. So I think for anyone, one of the things you can do to begin with is try and find someone who's already raised money before, whether it's a founder, whether it's some founder who's also gone and raised a seed round. Send them a message, tell them what you're about to do, see if they can get on a call with you and just explain the process, and just prepare yourself as much as possible. But the best thing I ever did was, I've known this guy who raised money for me for like 7 or 8 months before we went and raised money. He's a really, really, really great guy, but has a huge contact book in terms of high net worth individuals and VCs. So if you can find someone like that, and there are plenty out there, they usually take 4, 5, 6, 7% off what you end up raising, which is fine. But in the long run, you certainly just want to have someone there to have your back, who knows the industry, who knows what you're walking into, and more importantly too, can, I guess, prepare you for all of it and make sure that you're not missing any documents, you're not missing any key points, because if you are, you will be called out on it by whoever you're pitching to.
And I guess it's really an investment in your own energy as well, making sure you're not wasting your time leaving a critical piece of the puzzle, outside of that room, right?
Oh, definitely. And that's why it's a smart move to figure out, well, who's raised money before, number one, whether it's some sort of startup, go talk to the CEO, figure out how they raised money, so who helped them, what were the processes they went through, what are some of the things they had to prepare, to present, figure all that out. But the biggest thing is just figure out who helped them raise that money. And if your idea is good enough, you will get money for it. There's so much money in terms of startups and VCs and all that sort of stuff. That's not the problem. It's the idea and it's the founder. So you've just got to make sure that you internally believe that you are good enough to make this product work. But then more importantly too, the product itself and the idea that you're going for is big enough, it's scalable enough. The solution that's providing is not as complex as something like Facebook. It won't take 3 or 4 years to build. You can have this thing done in 3 to 6 months. So yeah, it's just being as practical as down to earth. Be honest with whoever you're pitching to as well. That's a huge one. They see straight through dishonest people. And these are just stories that I've heard time and time again, meeting more people who have also raised money. Because I ask, the questions you're asking me right now are ones that I was asking, 6, 7 months ago. What am I looking out for? Who do I talk to? Where do I start? And the biggest and the best thing anyone can do is just figure out who you know, who they know, and move yourself up the food chain and figure out the best answers and ask good questions and figure out the best answers from there.
And so do you think your media profile that you'd had, started developing shortly before, did that really help you here? Or was it really the venture partners and that experience that sort of played a more...
Look, I'd like to say the product itself sold everything, and the product and the solution and all that stuff we've got is, it wouldn't matter what I've got or done or anything like that. It still wouldn't have got any money for it. But look, at the end of the day, for anyone to give, a cent to an 18-year-old, they're going to have to believe in that 18-year-old's vision, even if they're 19 or even a 25-year-old with, no degree behind them, with no experience running a tech startup before, apart from their own internal company, which, yes, they've grown. You need some sort of proof, and you need some sort of, I guess, reassurance for them that the money they're going to give you is not just going to be blown on a car or stupid things. And you walk back around in 12 months' time and go, hey guys, can we have some more money? We ran out of the one you gave us before. Like, that's for every single VC's worst nightmare. So at the end of the day, certainly, the media definitely helped. It's all just about credibility, and the more that you can do within your space, and the more that you can build yourself and build your brand and build your experience and build confidence in whoever you're talking to. Because at the end of the day, a VC investing in your business is essentially just a business deal. All people are looking for is confidence, trust, and reliability, and they're looking for that in you. So at the end of the day, if you can tick all those boxes, you'll be fine. But it might be a 2-year process to get to the point where you think a VC will be comfortable investing in you. Don't put it off, or don't not do it because you don't think you're good enough. Just kind of put a plan in. If it's going to take 2 years to build your credibility up and get a couple of wins under your belt for a few small things you're working on, that's awesome. Go do that. But just wait your turn, be patient. Life is long. And if it takes you 2 years to raise more money or raise money, that's fine, as opposed to doing it now, walking in and getting laughed out of the room. No one wants that. You never want that. Just got to take the time, be practical, figure out what you want, figure out how you're going to get it, and figure out what you'll need to be as a person to walk into that room and pitch these people, figure out what they're looking for. And I think at the end of the day, you're only going to know the answer to that until you talk to people and ask the question, do you reckon I'm going to be getting some money behind what I'm doing? If the answer is yes, from someone who's done what you've done before, you're ready to go. If the answer is no, response you come back with is, well, how can I do it? And then you go from there.
Of course. And as you've said, it's a business deal at the end of the day. And so how has your approach been now that you have accepted funding to get this idea off the ground? And like, how does that differ to when you're sort of experimenting with your own $500? Obviously the amount's going to be more than $500, but how is that approach changed because of that?
Yeah, well, look, actually, believe it or not, even though it's not my money technically, the responsibility level for me personally has gone through the roof, because even though you think if you've got your own money, you never want to lose it, and you feel like that's a big responsibility because that's all you've got. Actually taking other people's money and combining that with your own money to get and go do something big is actually a much, much, much larger responsibility. So at the end of the day, it's a responsibility, but it's also an honor. I can't believe that there's people, not to call them out or anything, but I can't believe there's people who have the trust and the confidence and all that sort of stuff to be giving kids like myself an absolute incredible opportunity to go and change the world in one way or another. And my complete hats off them, not just because they gave me money, but because they're willing to invest in kids like myself. So there are certainly people out there, but at the end of the day, it's an honor, it's a responsibility, and you just got to be ready for that. And I think that if you kind of take that on board and believe in yourself and you believe in the product, doesn't matter where the money's come from, you just got to make it work, and you just go from there.
And obviously looking forward, and it would have been part of your business pitch, is there a planned strategy for exit? Because obviously every VC is looking to make a return, or is this like a scale, or not sure yet?
Look, it's definitely a scale. Look, and that's what I sit in my head. For me personally, I find great gratitude, and I think it's pretty proven. There's no justification to why a 12-year-old ever start a business and forego doing fun things to sit in front of a computer and build websites. That was fun for me, and it is fun for me. So building businesses, operations, day-to-day stuff like sitting in front of a computer for 12 hours a day, sometimes it might put a strain on me. I might get burnt out and I might get tired, but I love it, and it's what I do. It's what I feel I'm built to do. So in terms of thinking about an exit or thinking about who I'm going to sell to or flog this off to in 2 years' time for X amount of dollars, it's not really a conversation I have with myself. I think that if you are thinking about an exit strategy, it's something you've kind of got to consider. But if you're thinking about an exit strategy at a startup phase, you kind of got to think, what the hell are you doing? You're in it for the wrong reasons. So it's just balancing the two. But obviously, you've got to think about it, but it's not what you focus on.
And obviously, talking of balance, how do you strike the balance between the new venture, Disputify, as well as what you're doing with your education platforms? Obviously, they're under some kind of management, but how do you strike that?
Look, yeah, it's just, no one's perfect. You learn it over time. You just figure out, where is your energy needed. I think it's also too, it's being proactive instead of reactive. Every day there's always fires that come up in one business or another. Just like in any business, there's always fires and problems and issues to put out and things to manage and all that sort of stuff. So over time, you kind of just learn it. If you learn it quickly, that's better. Some sort of foresight and understanding that, you've kind of got to look forward and try to spot those fires and try to be as proactive as possible, and, try to manage these businesses in the best way possible without just trying to play catch up and chase your tail and all that sort of stuff. It just ends very poorly. So for me, that's kind of how I manage it all. I've got a couple of great support team around me as well. I've got great mentors. I've got, great advisors. I've got some really good people that, I've met over the last couple of years, have brought into my inner circle and helped me manage everything just from afar, looking in and telling me how I can better do things. So for me, that's super important. And I know a lot of people don't have that. So at the end of the day, I didn't for a very long time. So at the end of the day, it's just kind of figuring out, well, where is your attention needed most? How can you become more proactive as opposed to reactive? But then more importantly too, getting some people on the outside looking in just to figure out if there are things that you can't see that you think you should be doing better, but actually that's the wrong way of doing things. Just helping you kind of craft that path forward. Otherwise, you just get stuck chasing your tail and you go nowhere in the grand scheme of things.
One thing that you've kind of covered there a little bit as well, with your sort of personal growth during this journey, how has that helped you deal with that inevitable separation from, say, your peers in high school? You mentioned a little bit at the start where, things change and opinions change, particularly in Australia with that sort of tall poppy approach and things. How have you sort of grown, when the average 18-year-old might be out at the club, and you're sort of working on your business, and how has your circle changed and, how's that progressed?
Look, at the end of the day, once again, it's striking a balance. I still do try to be an 18-year-old, at some times, try to, not have look back in 10 years time and go, oh, I wish I did more of this, or I wish I went clubbing more, for example, or I wish I, took that opportunity, but I just never did. So for me, it's once again, trying to find a balance. Look, I had to grow up very quickly. That was very important. Never did I think, at 18 years old, I'd be sitting just even having a meeting for a business conversation. It's not what a lot of kids do until they're 26, 27 and finish university. Sit on 7 or 8 a day. So it's just, you have to grow up very quickly. You have to, learn a lot of the things that older people would expect you to know. But then again, they kind of treat you at a level where you are 35 or 40 years old, but you're still actually 18. So you've got to, you've got to adapt and you've got to change and you've got to make sure that you're prepared for that. But that's something you just do over time. And in terms of me trying to manage everything, it's just, once again, having good time management and just figuring out, well, being an 18-year-old is great, but I am still 18. I'm not 35. I'm not 40, even though I might think like one, even though I might act like one. So just trying to, once again, have the balance.
Yeah. I mean, I started a business when I was 22 and had to pretend that I was a little bit older. So I can sort of sympathize there to some extent. Not quite to the same level, but...
well, mate, you try, and for anyone who has done a business in school, you try do business phone calls anytime whilst in school, especially too when I was in grade 12. You'd be doing a business phone call in the library, for example, when I had a spare period, which I was lucky enough to get. And I'll be doing business phone calls and you hear the bell ring in the background and you hear kids outside the room scuttling. And some people didn't know you were still in school. Like, obviously they knew you were 17 or 18, but they didn't realize they were having a conversation with you whilst you were at school. No one thinks about it. So that was, it's funnily enough. And also too, hotels were a big one, not being able to set up bank accounts in my own name. There are so many different things you've got to adjust to when you are starting a business, under the age of 18. But once again, it's all the fun of it, and you've just got to learn and adapt and figure out the best way around it all.
And I think that's an interesting perspective as well is, as you say, you can't even legally set up a company at age 16. And so how instrumental were your parents in that process, even if they don't understand what it is they're helping you set up?
Yeah, and look, that's what I'm super thankful. Really, really, really. If I could thank them for one thing, it's having, or to put it like, I don't know the best way to put it, but it's like always supporting me through, no matter how crazy the idea, always just going, yep, Jack, that's okay. And just kind of letting me run my own path, make my own mistakes. not stepping in and trying to fix things, not trying to manage me, not trying to do any of that sort of stuff. At the time, it just kind of felt like, oh, great, okay, that's what they should be doing. But looking back now, I'm so thankful that there wasn't that overarching level of, tight, strict control. Yeah, of course, they'd ask me every single time. I'd ask them to sign. My mum, for example, I'd ask her to sign stuff or bring it down to the bank, ask her to submit stuff for me and all that sort of stuff. Of course, she's going to ask, what is this for? I'd try and explain it and all that sort of stuff. I'd probably never do a good job at it. But I think that there are some, most parents I'd say would be like them in terms of having that leniency. But I know that there are a lot who would say, no, you can't start a business till you're 18. You can't do anything until you finish university, finish school, then do the business. So I'm just glad that I wasn't, put into a household that, required that. I think if I was, I'd still find a way around it. I'm like, don't worry. But yeah, no, I'm just thankful for all of it.
Because even down to simple things like attaching a credit card to your Facebook ads account, you need that support in order to do the most simple things.
Yep.
So we're coming up on time, but I've got a few quick questions that I'd love to get out, and then we'll try and get you out of here. And I'm sure you got very important things to do today too.
Obviously, nothing more important than this. Come on.
Hey, I appreciate the sentiment. Hey. So thinking back around the last few years, is there one particular thing that stands out that you can attribute as like a major success moment?
Probably finishing school. Not going to lie. The most teenager of teenage answers, I know. But for me, it was kind of something that I'd always wanted to. I'd always wanted to finish school. I just wanted to get out of there at all costs. And I was a kid who'd walk into the office and say, sorry guys, I'll be in the principal's office and saying I'm going to be gone next week because we're going on a trip to Sydney, and that was pretty much once a week. So I didn't spend all that much time there at school, but was still getting, B pluses, trying to be engaged, trying to do my best, trying to manage everything as best as I possibly could. So finishing school for me was like almost like liberation day is what it felt like at the time. I'd written a lot about and still write a lot about news.com.au in terms of the education system and the fair way that it should be supporting kids, and more importantly too, the real world skills behind what we should be taught. So I just felt like, now and after finishing, the instant thought of gratitude, the fact that I now have the opportunity to make a decision, but more importantly too, when I made that decision, it would only affect me. When you're in school and you choose not to do your homework, it doesn't just affect you, it affects your parents, it affects your teachers, people rouse on you, people care, and they'll get you to do it. Whereas in the real world, no one's there to hold your hands, no one's there to support you, no one's there to double check on what you're doing. And for me, that was as scary as it was at the same time too. It was liberating on the other end of things. Like now I could finally be in control of every single thing that I did. And it was something that I just never really had full control over everything. Obviously, the school was there. So for me, finishing was just really cool. And just satisfying. And I know it's the most 18-year-old of answers, but it really was one of the best days that, I've ever had. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. I mean, it's quite an achievement, and I'm sure it frees up an awful lot of your time to spend on new business ventures too. So that's probably a bonus as well. If there was one tip that you had for, say, another 17-year-old who's looking to start a business and maybe can't get support from their parents, what would that be?
Specifically, if they can't get support from their parents, would you put it in the context of being like, parents are flat, no, don't do it, you're not allowed to, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think, very dogmatic around must finish school, must go down the university path, something like that. So
I'd say if you can't do it, you've got to figure out, well, is it worth you doing it behind their back? That's obviously option number A. Option number B would be that you wait until you finish school and you follow what they say. For me, for example, I'll bring it back to school for a minute. Look, I always thought, and a lot of people would say, well, why don't you drop out of school? Why are you still kind of trying at school? Shouldn't you just get D's and E's and just kind of flunk out and then just kind of get through it all? As much as I kind of wanted to do that, at the end of the day, how you do anything is how you do everything. And at the same time too, you've got to figure out what is that fine line between you doing a really poor job at something, and then you've got people who are going to rouse on you, people who are going to try to pull you back. If you drop from a B in a subject all the way down to a D, you're going to have half the school freaking out. You're going to be parents, you're going to have teachers. It's going to create a really, really, really toxic environment, and you're going to be sitting there pulling your hair out going, oh my God. So same goes with the business. It's a case-by-case situation, but if you want to go with the fact that, the parents will kick you out of the house if you do start anything, and, your whole life will be turned upside down, spend the time to educate. don't actually start anything, because if you've come to the conclusion that it's just not worth doing and the consequences are too high, just learn, just educate, get the books, get the mentors. For example, you don't need physical one. You don't need to have anyone talk to you personally. Jump on YouTube, start watching people. CEO interviews, for example. Watch as many of those as humanly possible. So by the time that you're done school, and let's say you spent 2 years self-educating a day, an hour or two every single day, you tell me, Rob, if someone spent 2 hours every single day whilst in school educating, and you're spending every single one of those 2 hours actually learning really, really, really high quality skills, how good do you reckon they'd be when they finish grade 12 in terms of actually start something?
They'll be killing it.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, it's like maybe it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. As much as you really want to start something now and you really want to do it, if there is no physical way for you to do it whatsoever, just kind of think about, well, what's your plan B? Next best thing is, well, figure out the skills and the fundamentals and the best way to actually start this business. Figure out what the hell you're going to start, figuring how you're going to do it, figure out a lot of the things a lot of people don't really figure out until they actually start something and then kind of stuff around for a little bit, fall over themselves, and then get the business up and running. You can spend that 2 years figuring all that out. So when you are let out of the gates and you do have the opportunity to do it, you'll be so much better than anyone else who's starting at the exact same time as you.
You can really hit the ground running. Absolutely.
Exactly. So yeah, at the end of the day, there's no real hard answer. It's just a case-by-case situation. If you can't do it, just kind of think about what's the next best thing. And that's theoretically doing one in your own head, and more importantly too, learning how to do it properly.
Awesome. And so obviously you've spoken about mentors a few times, and I also think that mentors are extremely important. How have you had to navigate at some point between the advice they've given and the gut instinct that you had, and maybe those two didn't align?
Look, I kind of talk about, mentors don't actually have to be someone that you physically identify as a mentor. I believe that you learn something from every single person you come into contact with, every single person you speak to, whether it's, the goddamn gardener, or whether it's the king, the Queen of England. You learn something from everyone and at every single level. But at the same time too, you've got to become good at filtering information. No matter how great a mentor might be, there are always going to be things that they might say that, as you mentioned, you've got that little gut feeling that says, no, I just don't think this is right. Just because they're your mentor doesn't make every single thing that they say right or correct. It's all just information that gets given to you, and then you make the decision on what you want to do with it. So I think it's just picking who suits you best. You don't have to have them physically mentoring you. You can watch them online. Grant Cardone's a great example. I might watch Grant maybe once a week, twice a week, just see his video or an Instagram post here and there. I will strategically choose what I want to take out of a video. Just because I might sit there and watch Grant's video for 60 seconds does not mean I need to absorb and do every single thing or act like he does in that 60 seconds next time I want to go take on his advice. So just become strategic in kind of the advice you're taking in. Have a pretty good filter there to block things out. Things that don't feel right to you, don't do them. But at the same time too, for the information that you do choose to take on board, actually do something with it, and take that and make a change in your own life, start the business, do whatever the advice is, the advice is in relation to, go out there and take action on it if you have chosen to take it on board and use it.
Good advice. And so, Jack, where can people find you and what you're up to right now? Websites and socials?
Oh, look, website, jackbloomfield.com.au. Check out there, but the best place, obviously, is always Instagram and Facebook. So Instagram, it's at Jack Bloomfield, and the exact same thing for Facebook. So there'll be always a lot of stuff coming on there. That's the main place. I like to reach out and communicate with everyone. But a lot coming up the next couple of months, which is all really exciting. So I guess Rob will have to jump on here in the next coming months and update you then.
Mate, we look forward to seeing what you're doing. So Jack Bloomfield from Disputify and Bloomfield Group, I've really appreciated this extraordinary chat, and thank you so much for your time.
No, mate, thank you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. There you have it. I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please like it, share it, or leave us a review on your favourite platform. It helps us show more of this content to people just like you.